Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Doing all right. How are you doing?
Good. So it looks like we're just missing Neil and we're still got about a minute.
Do you have any staff who are joining us as well?
Not that I'm aware of for this.
Okay. And then Franklin, are you going to be taking the minutes?
I am here taking minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm also sharing screen the agenda, so it's up. Let
That's
me know if you all need anything.
Thank you so much. Looks like Neil's in. He's just getting attached to the audio. Okay. So Neil, since we don't have a chair yet, how do we call ourselves to order?
how did y'all do it last? How did y'all do it for the other committee, Sarah?
Hey, Sarah, good question. You don't technically need a chair for a committee meeting like this, but I think it's a good idea to have one just to maintain order. So I just suggest we just start and, I can call us to order. Any of you can read the public charge and then approve the agenda, and then we can then we'll just select the chair, by consensus or discussion at that point.
Great. All right. Does anyone have the public charge in front of them?
I do not. I do not have it in front of me.
That's all right. Can we just move to, and I see Dr. Merrill has joined us. Excellent. Can we just move to the approving of the agenda?
Yeah, motion to approve agenda.
I will second that.
All in favor?
I think we need to do roll call.
Yeah, so
I just heard Andre say yes.
okay.
I say yes.
And I say yes, so we've got unanimous, so it's approved.
Here's our agenda. Okay, so the first thing is to select a chair. I don't mind doing it. I'll just say, like, I would raise my hand for that. Talent people stuff is my day job work. And so I've been thinking about this work for a little while and I don't mind doing that unless anyone feels strongly about wanting to be the chair of this thing.
I don't. Andre, how do you feel?
I'm fine with Sarah being chair.
Yeah, I don't, as you know, Sarah, I'm passionate about it, but I would definitely be very grateful for you to be chair for this committee.
Okay. Well, sure, I'm happy to. I mean, this isn't going to be a long-standing committee, so hopefully we'll just do this in a couple of meetings and get it done. Anybody want a motion?
Motion to make Sarah chair of the Employee Advocate Committee meeting or committee.
And I second.
All right. I'll say aye.
Aye. All right.
All right. Okay. So with that, here's my virtual gavel. So first we will go over the purpose of the committee. Neil, do you have sort of a summary of that from our meeting by any chance? I know.
I'm having a hard time hearing. It's just very quiet on my end. What was your question?
Do you happen to have sort of a summary of the purpose of this committee? Otherwise, I can verbally try to summarize and have other people add.
So, yeah, I was actually not there at the meeting when it was happening. I mean, I recall the prior board meetings and certainly understand the general interest in, the original discussion was extensively about ombuds. There was a widespread support in the board for creation of some ombuds committee. I think the name of this committee officially from that last meeting is Employee Advocate Committee. Just that's a title, but the discussions, were the creation of some sort of ombuds. And then relatedly, the administration had recommended at one point the creation of a new position in human capital. But as I recall, that job description that was proposed was different, very different from what you would describe as an ombuds. That was more like someone to investigate personnel matters and a new human capital position performing functions that are already performed in human capital, but just sort of shuffling duties within the department, essentially. So that's the broad rubric, and those of you who were there for the meeting, this committee was appointed, may have more to share.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the board ended up moving in a direction, not sort of, as you were saying, favoring like an employee relations investigative role in HR, not creating an additional position in HR, but wanting something that was a bit more independent of the sort of existing channels to play a different function. And this topic had gone a bit long in a number of board meetings, and we realized that in order to do the work of actually sort of making a recommendation to the board of like what would be specifically the scope of work and the job description and so forth, that we could take it out into a committee to just do the work of hammering that out and bring something fully formed to the board rather than long debates stretching out our evenings. That was the idea. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, Sarah, I agree. From my notes, the big one was kind of the roles and responsibilities, the job description, and bringing a recommendation physically back to the board, not just saying, here's a list, but here's a recommendation. And I think included in that recommendation, there was some questions around, is this person part-time? Or are we recommending they come in and they're here 40 hours a week, or what is the first recommendation of that? And I think everybody was open to, hey, what do we think after we dig into this a little bit? So that was just from a couple of other nuances from that discussion.
Yep. And our earlier budget discussion about that had been, the initial leaning, I think, of the board at that time was that it was probably more part-time work initially, and that it was probably more staff facing rather than whole community facing. And I think there's an open question that we should talk about sort of outsourcing this to try it out initially versus the creation of a permanent role. So those were some of the different dimensions I think we were also talking about there.
Yeah, I agree. It was the what and the how. Like, how do we actually do it? To your point, do you get a consultant that meets that, or do you bring them on board? They have benefits, etc. And then what were the kind of pros and cons around doing that? And then obviously kind of trying to get a cost estimate around that. And I believe there was some discussion if HR could help us with getting what they believe the costing would be around that.
Yeah. Andre, do you have anything else to add from from the meeting or anything?
Nothing really, just to someone, I guess, that's going to have a great relationship, and someone who's going to be staff, going to feel super comfortable with reaching out to and sharing any concerns.
And Dr. Merrill, I know it's your very first, you're in your third hour with the district right now, and just learning about this now, but I'm curious if you have any other questions or thoughts or things you think we should be considering.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I'm unmuted. You can hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, just reactions, and you can just say, no, we've already covered that. What is the problem that this position is trying to solve? And normally I would say, you feel like you're not getting good information, there's a lack of trust, et cetera. And if that's accurate, then what you expect from this position is what you should be expecting from the superintendent. And so I'd be inclined to say, you'd almost try and sunset this thing. If your next superintendent can create a culture or open channels or whatever that employees are comfortable, because you said primarily staff facing, I thought I heard you say, then this position should actually be able to go away, because the staff would be comfortable enough to know, okay, we got people we can call, that we got people we can talk to. So I make the assumption that this is about you trying to get accurate information and provide a channel for employees, because they don't trust where they have to go right now through normal chains of command. I think part-time makes sense. I think the code of conduct makes sense, but you do have a policy for board members on code of conduct, and it could be the same for them, for this person. You've got reporting to you. And so, for instance, when you get a report, is it written, and therefore is it public? If it's verbal, is it entitled to be closed? And therefore, just you and the attorney. I'm not trying to complicate this. I'm just saying some things that have come to me.
Mhm.
Do I and or does the next superintendent sit in also? Because it's important for your paid leader to be able to solve whatever the ombuds person is getting. That's, and I worry about sort of the secret confidential conversations that board members get caught in. And then the employee or someone expects something to happen, and then it's often a mess. And so this could lead you into more complicated issues, this position. And ideally, I would think you'd want to take what you get and kick it back to staff and say, all right, here's what we got. To the extent we can keep an employee confident, we intend to do so, yada, yada, but can you address this? And then let us know what you came back with, and you sort of check the box and say, okay, well, something happened there. So that's a real shotgun of what I'm reacting to. So I'll stop.
Yeah. Thank you for all those thoughts. Just to get to your first question about what problem is this approach trying to solve? I think it is, there's something that a number of board members have heard at different points from staff members. It's around the lack of trust issue and fear of retaliation, and just a discomfort, as we talk to people and encourage them to go speak to their principal about it, or, elevate things up the chain of command, just a fear about retaliation, that kind of thing. It's not unique to Orange County, but I think it has been a long-standing trend here, to the point that, this is before my time on the board, but there was like a resolution the board did, like teachers have First Amendment rights and can speak, there were a variety of, we just don't have a culture of sort of direct conversation. And so wanting to create sort of an independent, confidential way for staff to elevate their concerns and then potentially get some support in resolving those in sort of a more informal way, or advising.
I assume so, and building trust is critical to a smooth organization. It's a building block, and it should be the goal that there becomes no longer a need for this. Then right. You've gotten to a level of communication and trust in the district that we probably don't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Will, I see your hand up.
Yes. Well, one other thing I wanted to add was that, from some of the things that I've heard, and I know others have heard, is sometimes it's not that they have a specific issue. They're not sure what to do. Like, they don't want to call HR because they feel like, hey, something will happen, or, whatever. And so part of this position would be just to help them say, oh, well, if you're trying to do that, here's a policy and here's what you can do. Or, oh, to your point, you would start with your, if it's high school, maybe there's a department chair that you talk to. And then, if you've done that, then you can talk to the principal, and giving employees kind of that guidance where, they know they're getting it firsthand, and they can make a decision about it. And then also, if they're stressed at work, what are some of the things in the district they have to them that they may not, they may be concerned if they called, the person would know them and they're asking for some kind of help. So all of those things together, along with, the fear of retaliation and all that. But I didn't want to leave off the table that I'm just looking for information, or I'm just wanting to know the next step, or, because it doesn't have to be they're going to them for a bad reason. It may be a personal reason that they're really uncomfortable about talking about. So that was just one of the other things that I've heard in these conversations that I want to make sure we, we're bringing up as a value to the employees. And I agree, if, all things equal, helping with the climate culture long term, you wouldn't need this at all. So
And we do, just to Will's point, we do have an employee assistance program, an EAP, that is that sort of, I need to find a counselor or whatever it is, that is, again, external, independent, confidential. But we've heard some staff members are like, don't really believe that it's really confidential. There's
That's traditional.
yeah. So, so they may end up at the ombuds, and hopefully the ombuds would redirect them to the right person. But if it's I don't know how to have this conversation with my principal or the head of my department or whatever, they can also provide them coaching to have that conversation themselves, potentially, to actually build the skills of people to be able to have more direct conversations in the first place.
One thing I've been successful with in establishing or improving trust is a teacher advisory group that I meet with on a regular basis. It may exist right now, but the manner in which you build trust first ripples back to the staff back in the schools, because they're representatives, and that can quickly start to say, okay, new day, let's try something. So I'm going to be doing that regardless during my 6 months here and establishing that, because I enjoy those times. So
that's excellent. And we do have reestablished as of last year a teacher advisory committee of the past teachers of the year. So that group is in place, helped plan the summer professional development for teachers and such. So that's excellent. And I totally agree. So moving into this discussion, what I propose we try to get out of today, because I know we only have until 1 o'clock, right? So we have 45 minutes and we want to move this forward. And I think there's a few aspects of the role it would be helpful to try to talk through, and then spend some time at the end sort of figuring out what the next steps are. One is what sort of type of model of this role do we want to use? And we've got the K through 12 Ombuds toolkit that's linked in the materials. We have a number of different job descriptions. One of the things that I found really useful in there was in the K-12 School Ombuds toolkit, there was comparing different types of the roles, organizational, classical advocate type roles, and what traditionally each of them have done. And I do think from the board discussion so far, we're looking for something in the organizational ombuds role. So not the person who would do the official investigations, right? That there is a separate role for that. But informal, dispute resolution, coaching, pointing people to things. The descriptions of it read more like an organizational ombuds. So as we're defining this, I'm in favor of taking a type of role that exists in the world, right, that people will have experience in, and sort of starting from there in terms of the scope of the responsibilities. I'm curious what others, have you all had a chance to look through those different types of models? And I've gone way too.
Yeah, I personally have not been able to go through all of that. I mean, there were 5 or 6 different items. So I went to the toolkit and looked at kind of cursory of the things there, but I also spent a majority of the time looking at what people in the school districts have already done, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I would imagine they are doing a similar kind of approach, right? Because schools and things like that. And so, I looked at the Pasadena Unified School District that was attached, and it seemed really close to what I've heard people say, but to your
Mhm.
point, I haven't looked at the toolkit to see those specific types of
Yeah.
what would make sense. So I have no context of the
Mhm.
different ones you're saying right now.
Yeah. I think one piece of it that would be helpful to like just see what the three of us think about, and Dr. Merrill, if you have an opinion on this too, is the role in complaints and like sort of investigations. And I'm seeing you shake your head. Well, you don't
I
think the
don't
role
think
should
they
be?
should do investigations. I think
Yeah.
you get into a legal mess on that.
Yes.
And I think that's beyond the scope of the intention, because now you have somebody that's outside of HR, and that's just my personal feeling on it, but
Yeah. Andre, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think when you start digging and diving like that, then yeah, it becomes a legal issue.
Mm-hmm.
But just having someone that can, have open ears to, whatever the staff has got going on or staff member has going on.
Yep.
And then being able to redirect or, kind of coach them through and then bring something back to us if needed, then yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point about bringing something back to us too, I think that's another piece we should get at in the expectations of it is a lot of times what the role will do is sort of they're addressing individuals, but then they're keeping track of trends in an anonymous way, right? So by site or department or theme or those kinds of things, and reporting that back to the board and superintendent, so that and Dr. Merrill brought this up too about, really being the superintendent's role to address those things, right? So bringing that back to, am I frozen? No, okay. Bringing that back, sort of these are the trends, potentially with some recommendations, and then the superintendent coming up with sort of a plan to address those things. So I'd love for that to be a piece of it too, those like broader trends and the specific sort of addressing what comes to them.
yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Andre, sorry.
And having, like you said, Sarah, having something to share, maybe some statistics,
Mhm,
and just showing how things have gotten better.
mhm.
And like you said, some places that that we need to work on, focus our attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's in that the list that I send out to everybody, that it, like you're saying, Sarah, identifying issues and opportunities for systematic change that
Yeah.
may not be obvious from the day to day, but since they're having these conversations, they may say, hey, you know what? This seems to be an issue, and here's some things that I've heard that would make it a better environment, right? Whatever that may be.
Exactly. Yep. On the question of, okay, so no to investigations, yes to individual sort of like case management and broader trend recommendations. On the question of staff only versus sort of the whole school community, because the districts that have like a full-time person, it is generally that whole thing. And I will say, I think my view is like long-term, I think there is, I don't know if it makes sense for a district our size to have this role as a full-time role. I do think in the districts that have it, it can be a pathway for a parent of an exceptional children student who has concerns about their services or, concerns about bullying. It's just an additional pathway for people to potentially get their needs addressed, and just figure out, to that point about like navigating the system, really just get some guidance about where to go. I think the family liaisons to some degree play some of that role. And so there's sort of role, there would be additional stuff to work out there. And like the impetus for this was on the staff side. So my inclination is start on the staff side. And I think that's where we were leaning in the board meeting. I'm seeing you.
Yeah,
Well.
I completely agree, Sarah, because one one of the things that was part of this is given the environment, the shortage, and us trying to, help people that are coming into the district as new employees of, knowing that they have this support system. And on the EC side that you were mentioning, one of the things that is probably good for us to get an update is we were looking at doing SNAC, which was the Special Needs Advisory Council that like Chapel Hill has and Durham has, and we wanted to put that in place to give additional supports and having that available. So you're right, there's like kind of like an intersection of many of these, but to start off, I definitely would personally like to see it for our staff, and that way if we decide that, hey, this isn't needed and we are not having to redistribute roles, if you will. And I agree, the liaisons I think are fantastic resources for families, especially as they're trying to navigate.
Okay. Another aspect of this I think we should talk about is do we want to pursue a part-time role right now? I am more of the opinion of starting with outsourcing versus part-time role, but I wanted to see what you all think. I don't think full-time is feasible for us given our budget right now and just even where we are in the development of this.
Yeah, I'm with you, Sarah. I think a part-time role, because we're not looking to keep this long term. So yeah, definitely starting out with outsourcing.
Yeah, the only thing for me is I would like to see the cost difference, right? Just to see it, because I'll say this out loud. I would have a problem if we outsourced and they weren't paying a living wage. Like that would concern me. So knowing the kind of the cost structure for each, I think helps us with which one's the right path. But I agree, I don't think we can afford a full-time right now. And I think if that is split out over over a week and people have cell phone access, email access, I think it'll work. And then I think we'll get feedback. Like if people are saying this is fantastic, more, then we could adjust. Or to everybody's point, if we see there's a transition in our district and people are now feeling comfortable through the other routes, then that's where we decide, okay, we've done this and it's no longer needed, or hey, do we need more time now? Who knows? But I agree, the part-time to start out, to especially try to understand it. But I personally like to understand the cost structure between outsourcing and insourcing, so we just have a insight to what those two would be.
Yeah. I think that makes sense to compare costs. I think one of the advantages of outsourcing, if we were to do it, and I don't know how folks charge for this, but if they were to charge on an hourly rate based on their actual demand, then it wouldn't be the same as a part-time role that isn't fully being utilized or something, for example. And I also just suspect that going the outsourcing route will help us get someone into the position sooner, because my sense is that the hiring, it's a tough hiring climate for this role. I've seen like Guilford had the role. There are several districts in North Carolina that have had this role posted as a full-time role, and I don't think that they've filled it. And so trying to find someone with actual expertise and skill in this who wants to do a part-time role, I think we might have a hard time filling the role. So that's my thought, and more likely to get someone with real K-12 ombuds experience if we do the outsourcing. But I totally see your point about wanting to understand the cost for both. Neil, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just wanted to note that if you are inclined to go with what you're saying, outsourcing, essentially that means hiring an independent contractor. And as far as costs go, likely the structure would be, it's always negotiable, but what I would expect would be hourly rate, and we could include caps as you do in all your forum service contracts. In fact, we could use a forum service contract as a starting point. We've got a lot of good boilerplate background checks, indemnification, things that you would want for anybody who's working in your school district in any capacity. And then we could add the scope, but again, the cost would be negotiable, but I would expect it would be hourly rates, and we could include not to exceed, in any monthly period or quarter or year or however you wish.
Got it. So, if we were to proceed with wanting to sort of understand the potential cost in either case, I think we could still define the sort of like scope of responsibilities, scope of work similarly, and sort of desired qualifications. Like, I think it would be really helpful for them to have had K-12 ombuds experience. This is a role that people do. There are a couple of websites that I know of where they list sort of people who do contract work for this. There's 2 sites that I thought of, and then also, like, I don't know if anyone at the Dispute Settlement Center has this particular type of, it's sort of can be similar to mediation. So it might be that there's someone in their office who does this kind of work. I have no idea, but those are some of the, once we have something to bring to people, I think there's particular places you can go to try to find folks.
Would it make sense to ask the administration to sort of, make some calls and get some proposals, and, whether it's a formal RFP or even just reaching out to a few organizations that get, like, you all are interested in costs and options, rather than have, or would you prefer committee members could do it too? I'm just thinking it might save you all some time, and just have the administration take the information you already have, make the calls, get the proposals, kind of collect stuff up for your next meeting.
I think that could be helpful. I think we should probably get to the draft of this is the scope of responsibility we want, or in general.
Sure.
Now, I don't know how many hours a week or a month or however would be an appropriate amount to estimate here, because we just have no idea what the volume is going to be. But even in terms of a part-time role, would be talking about like 50%, or
I would recommend, Sarah, 20 hours, just because we have 13 schools, and if one person from each school calls, and them to have planning time around it. But I agree, I don't know, and maybe through discussions of the specifics, they may have recommendations. Hey, what we've experienced is, this is a good way to approach it, and there's some kind of a stepping stool of some sort where they say, I'm making it up, hey, as you get close at the beginning of the year, we recommend you going to 30 hours, and during the year you step down, and then towards the end of the year, we recommend that there's going to be a lot of people that may have questions and things. But anyway, maybe we can leverage their knowledge to see what's realistic on the amount of time.
right. Yeah, even what does that cadence look like for someone in this role? And the other piece, I'm not trying to change topics, but I just want to throw this out there too, that the other piece I think we could help with as a committee is some sort of policy that goes along with this. So apologies to anybody who did not see it. I literally found it an hour before this meeting, but Loudoun County, Virginia, has a really detailed policy. Now, their sort of audience is the whole, their whole school community and that kind of thing. And there's, Virginia specific statutes that it references and all of that. But what I liked about the policy, actually, would it be okay if I shared my screen to just literally so that you can see what I'm talking about? Okay, so this is Loudoun County, Virginia's policy. I think they just hired the role like a year ago, but I liked that it had a policy aligned to it that is clear about what is the purpose of the Office of the Ombuds. And we could sort of have something, whether it's outsourced or in, I think, you could change language, but like, what is their scope of authority? And it addresses like, who are they supervised by? that they're going to be independent and not hold other positions outside of the organization that could compromise independent. You know, it just makes a lot of specific, clear standards of practice. So use of services is voluntary. It just is very clear about like, they can help people in these ways. And when they do, it's going to be strictly confidential. But it also addresses like, they are a mandatory reporter. You know, it's just a very clear description of the practices, including like, they won't communicate with the media. They will, here are some of the ways they might address a concern, but they won't provide legal advice. Like, it's very detailed and talks about their access to records, what records they will keep, what would be a public record. I think it would be helpful in the end for the board to have something like this, but sort of our own version of it with some detail.
And sir, I'll just chime in quickly. I only read this once this morning, but of all the policies I've seen, this is by far the most detailed and clearly has been subject to extensive legal review. And so obviously the scope of this role is entirely up to the committee and ultimately the board, but I would chime in, this is a great starting point in terms of flagging legal issues that ought to be clarified and addressed somewhere, if not in policy, in some sort of written guidance. So I do think it's helpful, if for no other reason, even if you all don't like it, and yet at the end of the day, it really flags a lot of issues that we will need to think through before this position should be, formalized and established.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's a policy committee piece ultimately here, but I think we could play a role in sort of starting with something to send to the policy committee. Yeah, it talks about their role in investigations, how they would collect or not collect and report data, all of that.
I like it.
Yeah, that's why I, even though I just found it, I was like, this lays out all these things I think we need to think about that I have not seen in any of the other documents. So, okay. Okay. So what we really need to do is figure out how can we define this sort of scope of work next, or scope of responsibilities, and what qualifications we're looking for. I'm curious how you all think we should sort of do that as a group committee project. Yeah.
Sarah, I agree. And I've thought about that too, about how we do that. I'll just say that, one of the things I did like is, again, from the Pasadena, that one link where it says, here's what the ombuds will do and here's what they don't do, right? And I think that's very, very good. I don't know if y'all saw it. It's like a 2-pager, and it very clearly articulates to some of the points earlier about they don't do investigations, they're not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think us getting to, some of those as well,
Mm-hmm.
I think will help. And it's almost like, hey, why would you, what's the purpose of this? Because I know a lot of people will be like, well, when do I go to them? When do I not go to them? And but they just had lots of things I thought in there that was easy, because they talked about, explore a range of formal and informal solution options, guide or coach individuals to be prepared for a difficult conversation, and then on the other sides, they will not make a decision for you. They're not going to advocate for an individual or an entity, take sides in a dispute, so, and yeah, this is perfect. I think this, from everything I've heard from everybody, this seems like a good way, because I think we find ourselves trying to delineate we're inside the lines and outside the lines. And I think I think this helps us all say and kind of test where are the boundaries. But it's just my feeling on maybe a good way for us to try to, get to a good description and what what does it mean to be in our K-12 versus, others that people have
Mhm.
seen, and then also, talking about, on the office will not, that may be, community questions go to your liaisons for now. You have an HR grievance, you would go to HR, and maybe that changes over time and policy and things, but I think starting off and saying, well, here's kind of our true north, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I see Andre nodding too. Yeah. This document, I agree. I looked at that and I was like, well, that is very clear and succinct. I love it. I think and kind of aligns mostly. I mean, we should probably go through the bullets next, but like that really mostly describes, I think, the conversation we've been having. Yeah, the other piece that I liked in this also, right, they have the clear contact information and how that works, and then the guiding principles. These might be from that International Ombuds Association, I'm not sure, but this is confidential. It is independent from other, impartial and sort of informal, like that clarity about what they do, how they approach it, and what you can like count on from them seems very good. Yeah, and I think we'll have to work with Kevin's team in communications to, when we do have this ready to go, have like a great communication that is also an opportunity to point people to those other right places for the other kinds of things too. I think that's a great point. Let's see. So should we next just sort of go through these? How are we doing on time here? For 20 minutes. Do we just want to sort of read through these and see if there's anything on the will or will not side that you would want to change or add, take away? Can you all see that well enough? Should I zoom it in a little bit more?
It's perfect for me. I don't know.
You good? Okay.
The other thing I was doing is I was looking at the list that we had from other board member feedback to see if there's something that, and it looks like the only one that I don't see that's maybe not explicitly is the one that says neutral, unbiased, and objective. I see confidential.
I think it's like
the confidential.
impartial. Yeah,
Yeah.
the like independent and impartial piece, that's a little bit more guiding principles. But yeah, we could add confidential. You know what, it does have like on this side, it won't take sides in a dispute. So that's sort of a kind of addressed on the other side of the column.
It's confidential underneath the first, is it the first paragraph underneath guiding principles?
Yes.
Yes, it is. And well, what was that
Scroll
list?
up a little bit
Oh,
so
go ahead, Andre.
that part of,
Sorry, say that again.
do you mind scrolling up just a little bit so I can read that section of the
Oh,
confidentiality?
the top, yeah. Oh, this is reasons to visit. But there's also the, should we look at that section first? Is this the one you meant?
No, I'm sorry, scroll.
Yeah, it's on the next, this one, guiding principles. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yep, I like that.
I do too. Especially talking about imminent and serious harm.
Right,
by
yeah,
law.
yeah, absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Neil, you have your hand raised, sir.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to, on the confidentiality point, and first of all, this has been a great discussion, and I think you all are making, eliminating legal issues by the minute, which is great,
Right.
in the scope that where you're headed. Because I had a lot more to say if you were looking at a different type of policy or position here. On confidentiality, we will have to take a close look at that. That's one thing I think we have to be mindful of. Personal privacy law, which is different in North Carolina than California or in Virginia, so these might not map exactly these models we're looking at. Also, public records law may come into play, and there are various exceptions to the Public Records Act. So, which generally I always tell school folks, you start with the presumption that everything you put in writing is a public record. That's the baseline presumption. There are exceptions for certain things, but there is no ombuds exception, right? So if someone asked for the ombuds notes and emails and letters, we would have to produce them unless we identify an applicable exception. So that's something to think through. I think it could be managed, but it's something we have to be thoughtful about. The Loudon policy that Sarah shared, I think, does an excellent job of flagging that issue. And if I recall correctly, it says that the ombuds will generally not keep records precisely for that reason. So this is more of a, I'm here to, if you want to come meet with me in my office, come talk to me over the phone. That's a confidential setting. I don't share what's said. Once you put words to paper, we have to be very careful about whether whether an exception to the Public Records Act applies.
Yeah, I know someone who has been in ombuds, and I've talked to her a little bit about how that is handled. And in her case, but it is not a public, it's not a public school system or anything like it's like a nonprofit setting. But still, she doesn't take detailed notes or anything. She takes like brief notes that she essentially like shreds once that she's done working with that person. But she does keep detailed records of like dates, like when types of concerns, she has like a system, right, for like coding different types of concerns, where they came from, like the sort of information where you could be talking a little bit more about sort of trends.
Yeah, because one of the things, Neil, that you said that I would be curious to make sure we know, and to your point, Sarah, was record retention. Is there any requirements? Like you're saying, Sarah, I know if the records don't exist, they can't request them, but is there some kind of personnel law that requires records are retained or something? So that would just be one aspect I would definitely want to make sure we know.
It's a great point, and there are record retention schedules adopted by the Division of Cultural Resources, and so that is another thing that we would have to look at before saying the ombuds will shred materials. We would need to confirm that that's legal.
Yeah, right. And if not, maybe just not taking in order to, because one of the things we are really trying to address here is staff don't trust that things will be confidential. If you don't have the record, assuming it is something they truly can keep confidential, if that's not true, if they write down any notes, like maybe they don't need to write down the notes, something like that. Okay, maybe I'll go back to this list. Okay, so we were reviewing these lists to see if there's anything we would add or take away from either side.
So the only one, or one that comes to mind, I should say, is and maybe it's covered under refer individuals to appropriate resolution resources, but referring individuals to specific district resources, like not resolution, because they may call and say, hey, I have this situation at home and you can take FMLA, right? But that's not necessarily a resolution resource, but maybe, I don't know, it's that wording sounds very sharp versus, you're going to, refer them to where those resources are to assist that would be outside their scope, right? So it may be, hey, you can address this, or there is something within the district, but it's not me. Here's the person, here's the specific program, or here's something that is available to you. and they have that available, because I think one of the important parts is when somebody's just unsure or they don't feel comfortable talking about it and they want somebody to just navigate them a little bit. But I don't know, the resolution resource sounds kind of sharp on, somebody that just wants to, hey, who can I talk to? Or does the district have anything for childcare or leave family reasons or things like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I do think it's a little bit, there's another bullet called, that's the third one down, called provide or clarify information on policies, procedures, services, and programs. Which I think is that something about the policies and procedures doesn't exactly, that coming first. District, if we could even flip those, district services and programs and policies and procedures or something, it might ring more like what you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree, because I think when people get to policies, it seems like more formal
Right.
versus the others, which is really what we want to make sure of. Because, if we find out, on that a common question comes up to issues with childcare. Like, we get a lot of questions about childcare. We really don't have anything on that. And then, maybe there's something that could be done with that, or a partnership with some other organization or the county. So some of those can help us, just as the questions come up, to identify something new that we don't have as a benefit, or anyway, just I think swapping those would definitely be more helpful, as you said, that I read that first versus the others. But anyway.
Yeah. Maybe adding the word district or something as well. All right. I'm just waiting for you all to let me know when you're done sort of reviewing the full set.
I like what the office will not do. I think a lot of those are key in delineating a lot of the issues of grievance and not taking notices of concerns, because we definitely don't want somebody to say, oh, well, I told this person, and I don't know why they didn't take action on it. So I think it's very key that that is something that every employee gets a copy of this as, onboarding, so they know these are key elements of it. But I definitely do like what they will not do, because I think that helps clarify.
Yeah, agreed. And maybe when we get to the point where we're reviewing, Neil, the different legal considerations, that if there's anything else North Carolina specific here that we need to add to that list, we could do that.
Yeah, at a glance, this looks good to me. I mean, it actually reduces the number of legal issues that you would have to worry about in creating the position or drafting a policy. And then again, I think this sort of organizational model for the toolkit, and that the Ombuds is not conducting formal investigations, not making final decisions about the outcome of appeals, that it greatly simplifies things. For one thing, it means we wouldn't have to revise 6 to 10 other policies that currently designate other people as the investigators or decision makers in different types of concerns. So we would certainly have to review everything through a legal lens, but if you're moving in this direction, I think you all should just talk scope and give some direction on what you want to see, and I think we can do the legal end on the back end, as opposed to stopping you in your tracks.
Great.
And I think it's understood. It doesn't show, but I think it's completely understood that when this person is referring individuals to appropriate resolution resources or just redirecting them to whatever, is needed, that is done in a timely fashion. I think that's been a complaint that I've heard too, is that, some folks just haven't heard anything back, or, they've been waiting for a response.
So that's a great point, Andre, and I hadn't thought about this till you said it. When I read that, I read it as they're gonna say, hey, Andre, you should go talk to HR, not that they're going, HR, can you reach out to them? But I think we should be clear on which way it is, because I think for people feeling comfortable about confidential, you have to empower the person to take that step, not this person, because if this person changes their mind and calls you and says, oh, I've decided I don't want to do that. Oop, I've already sent it in, so, but that's how I read it, is refer individuals to appropriate, resolution resources or whichever, for them to choose. And maybe we have to add some wording around that, but I personally wasn't thinking about this person doing that on behalf of them, because I think because it goes to make decisions for you, right? You should do it. Here's the website, here's the brochure flyer. But I think that's a great point. But for me, I think it should be on the employee to take the next step. But I don't know how y'all feel, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, I agree with that point about empowering the employee to do it. And then I think maybe some of what you were talking about, Andre, there is like, but then I reach out to such and such department and I don't hear back for, X number of weeks, however long it is. And that might be a separate sort of responsiveness expectations, like for the administration to figure out, that they could communicate, right? So if the ombuds could then say, when you reach out to X department, like you should expect a reply within 3 days, like unless it's something like urgent, like them being able to say something about responsiveness that is reliable, so that the person knows it's not going to be. I know we're all used to like text replies, like my children are like, my sister's upset if I don't reply to her text immediately. So it's expectations about how quickly they're going to hear back, I think would be helpful.
In many cases, that is prescribed by policy. So that would certainly be a non-controversial role for the ombuds. Here's a copy of the bullying, harassment, and discrimination policy.
Mm-hmm.
You can highlight it for the employee, sit down, help them understand it. If you choose to file the complaint, you have a right to receive a written response within 10 school days. It's right here. But that wouldn't be setting the expectations. That would just be explaining policy.
Yep. Great. Okay, we only have 3 minutes left in this meeting. And there's actually two things I want to do. One is see Dr. Merrill, if you're having any thoughts about any of this, and then the other is figuring out what to do next.
I like your direction. I think you're wise, and you already see where some of the guidelines and rails need to be. So no, I'm good. I appreciate the time to watch and hang out.
Excellent. Okay, so next steps. I know Franklin's been taking minutes in this meeting, and I wonder, I don't know if there's a version of this where we can just sort of cut and paste things and make those edits that we talk to, but maybe that could be, we can send out a doodle poll to figure out when to next meet. At our next meeting, review that scope. I think maybe we could add the something along these lines of what is an ombuds to describe the position, describe the scope using something along the lines of this, what the role does and does not, and then figure out, we should talk about the reporting line thing, and get that to a form in our next meeting where we could start figuring out how much it would cost, internally versus externally, and sort of shopping that around. What do you all think about?
I like that. Can we also have Neil look at this a little deeper and the policy to give thoughts or be able to bring back areas that are concerned, or maybe he'll need to dig in deeper, maybe, depending on how long between our meeting. Because I definitely think if he finds an issue that's specific to North Carolina, we should know as quick as possible so we can make sure we're not setting up something that we can't do. Or
Mhm.
if there's an issue we need to discuss and Neil says, hey, you can do it this way or this way, but here,
Mhm.
these are your choices. I definitely think that's important for us to know and also get us ahead of, the wording or,
Mhm.
putting clarity around something that maybe needs it for North Carolina law. So
Mhm.
I'd be happy to do that, and if, it seems clear to me, but I thought I would ask, is there basically a consensus that the committee, you all like the Pasadena document, the description, especially the do's and don'ts, the very clear, description of well, and also you like in general, or at least are interested in the Loudon policy? Because if that would be helpful, if I could just take those two documents, kind of redline if there's any legally required changes or anything to comport with your other policies, bring that back to you. You can edit for content, but I can do the legal review on the front end if you like.
I would say too, Neil, just to say it out loud, is the 2 pages, right? Because the second page had confidential, independent, impartial, informal, and then that way, if you find something in there that you go, hey, this is a problem, at least we know it. But I think both of the pages really kind of encompass things we've been talking about, but it's put it in words and made it in a logical layout that makes it easy to consume.
Yeah, if you all like, so what I could do is create some version of this. Basically, all I would be doing is changing anything that I think needs to be changed for legal reasons, not weighing in on, is this the proper role of the ombuds? That's for you all to make recommendations to the board. But just a legal review, if these were to be adopted tomorrow in Orange County Schools, what changes would we need to make? And then I can redline that and do the same with the Loudon policy on the same understanding. It's not, you all aren't necessarily endorsing it yet, but then you would know if any changes would be legally required. Excuse me, at my throat. I'd be happy to do that for the next meeting, assuming we have a couple of weeks at least until the next meeting. I can get that time.
Yep. Great. So maybe we'll look a couple of weeks out. Does that sound right to you all? Maybe 2 weeks out. Okay.
Yep.
Have another hour at a lunchtime potentially, if that works. Okay.
For me, if it's virtual during lunch, I can do it. But if we want to meet in person, I need like the morning or afternoon so I could be in person. So bookends.
Okay. Andre, what's best for you?
Virtual works best.
Okay. All right. So we'll plan on a virtual hour to sort of finalize that scope and start to get the policy considerations together. I wonder if we should do the pricing out of it before or after we bring this back to the board in terms of the 2 models. Maybe do that first so that we bring to them and we've looked into these 2 models and this is the one we're recommending.
I don't really want to do the pricing. Who's going to make the calls and get that information?
Sorry, say that again, Neil.
I'm sorry. I'm asking, how would you like to get the information on pricing? Should that something the administration would reach out and get some quotes? Does someone have a list to get us started? I mean, I can Google as well as the next guy, but you may have some ideas.
Yeah. Maybe coming out of this next meeting, if we have that scope, I'm imagining that Ms. Hatcher's team could sort of help scope the, if it were an internal position, like what the compensation might look like. And then I'm not sure if there's someone available on her team or not, but I have like 3 different sources potentially of outsourcing, where to find people that I could share with anybody. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about how to operationalize that in our next meeting too. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Sarah. If we can get this to kind of a final state and have Neil look at it, I think it would be ideal for us to take that next step saying, this is what we're looking for, and then get some ballparks in there so we know what we're doing. And then maybe even to your point, the three that you know, having that discussion on what they recommend for timing, like what is not enough, what is too much time, and starting off and getting
Yeah.
some.
Oh, sorry, it's not 3 people I know. It's like websites that are directories of, so I don't know anybody, you know.
Oh, okay. Well,
I do know one ombuds. I could ask her, but she hasn't been to the K-12 space, so.
well, those 3 groups, I'm sure will have insight to what their experience has been, so.
Okay,
So basically holding the costing in for after the next meeting. First
Yeah.
step is look at scope with, after I've done the legal review of these 2 documents, you all can think about it. And then come back and make sure we have a clear sense of the scope that where you want to go. Then see how much would it cost to do an in-house or with a contractor. Is that right?
great. All right. Will, do you have something else before we motion to adjourn?
Nope, I just appreciate all the great conversation today, and Dr. Merrill, I appreciate your guidance as well on this. I think this is coming together really nicely, so I just wanted to say thank you, everybody.
All right, excellent. Thank you all very much. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Will,
Yes.
Andre,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.